So welcome everyone. It is so wonderful to see you, and we are very excited to host Dr. Divya. Please excuse my pronunciation.
Selvakumar.
Selvakumar.
Selvakumar, correct.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We're so glad to have you joining us from the Baltimore County Department of Aging today. And real quick, before I hand it over to her, I just want to name that today's presentation on nutrition and the brain is a project between Dr. Divya and the Department of Aging and the Vibrant Aging Peers Program at the Mental Health Association of Maryland. We are a Baltimore County specific program where we really focus on providing education and support to older adults throughout the county. And we are so excited to bring this really important topic to all of you today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Dr. Divya.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. I am so happy to have an opportunity to present here. And again, thank you so much, Casey, for connecting with me a couple of months ago to talk to me about wanting to come out for this event and having an opportunity to present. It's my pleasure. What the subject I'm going to be looking at is nutrition and brain health, and also touching upon the topics of resilience. How is it that people can have an opportunity to really cope during difficult times? Because as human being, I very much believe that the hardest and most difficult task and challenges that a person will face, no matter where they come from, is the ability to be able to cope during difficult times, and especially stressful and also very, very at times what it can seem seemingly just upsetting situations, and such as the current COVID pandemic that has been going on over the last almost a year and a half. Next month is going to mark 1.5 years since the COVID pandemic had began throughout our world. So I'm going to share this content, and I hope that everybody can see it. So let me know if you have any problems. Hopefully there shouldn't be any issues.
Can everyone see that?
Can everybody see the slides?
Oh, great. I see nodding. And Dr. Divya, before you jump into your content, I forgot to say your introduction. Do you mind
the bio.
if I read it real quick?
Go ahead, please.
All right. So sorry about that, everyone. Too many windows open on my computer. Dr. Divya is recently joined the Baltimore County Department of Aging as a nutrition program manager. Dr. Divya has a wide variety of different experiences in nutrition that encompasses global health, academia, community, and clinical nutrition. She is also a nutrition specialist, professor, registered dietitian, and consultant with 19 years of experience. Dr. Divya currently holds a registered dietitian's license in Maryland and the District of Columbia, and has lived and worked in Kuwait, India, Tanzania, and the United States. She is currently the founder of a small international charity organization, American Hindu World Service, AHWS, and a budding business, Divine Diets. All right, sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much again for the introduction. So this topic is based upon called brain health, and I'm going to go into the like a sort of a definition of the brain health, and then I'm going to move towards the nutrition aspect, because I'm going to be talking about this from the point of nutrition and from the dietary point of view, because the brain is, is the complex organ. It's marvelous. The human brain is, to measure a person's intelligence and as well as combining them with memory and personalities and everything makes each and every human being on the planet unique. Everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses, but there are always each and every person, I very much believe, has something positive and beautiful to offer to the world. So it is looking at the major medical status of what it is to be a healthy brain, the ability to be able to perform the mental processes of cognition, like thinking processes, judgment, like being able to understand and understand the difference between what's right and wrong, learning, whether it is a math problem, what is a language, what is like a concept, or how to do certain things, like from a physical point of view, or in sports or art, memory, how far you can think of, whether both short short-term as well as long-term memory, and of course the ability to speak. How do people be able to converse in multiple languages around the world? The maintenance of this is also normal behavior, that is not like controlling inhibitions, controlling what we say, learning that certain behaviors and that are not acceptable by society, learning to execute the activities of daily living. This is something that is frequently seen in many nursing homes and long-term nursing homes, and also in rehab camps for older people, because as we all get older, metabolism will slow down, things do start to slow down, and things like such as the activities of daily living, or known as the ADLs, like eating, bathing, continence, getting dressed, etc., is eventually going to get affected at some point. And so people are living longer. And while modern medicine has really advanced to a very, very like a high level, I would say though, however, we are not necessarily living much healthier. I mean, we do have this pandemic, the ability to cope, but people struggle in this country, particularly here in the United States, with issues related to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and hypertension, as well as obesity. And so we got to do something to really help us. So how are we going to be able to cope? So considering the Baltimore County Department of Aging works with the senior citizens 60 and over, the ages of 60 and over, I very much believe that each and every person should understand the importance of being able to, to be able to successfully know what to do and how to take care of themselves, like starting from the time they are, very young and all the way out until they are in their elderly years. Some of the brain disorders you've heard of: Alzheimer's disease, dementia, depression, anxiety, bipolar 1 and 2, Parkinson's disease, stroke, epilepsy, and head injury from the fall. Okay, there are a lot of issues and whatnot that come from each and every one of these. And unfortunately, like almost half of these medical conditions start to show in people when they are far younger. Depression and anxiety very common in adolescents and teens. Bipolar disorders has also been diagnosed. I've not really seen throughout my clinical years Parkinson's disease in young people and a stroke, but I have seen young people struggling or suffering from stroke, although it's not too common. Epilepsy, yep, that is a problem that can stem from childhood, and head injuries from fall. The elderly particularly are much more vulnerable because, as you get older, the balance and whatnot, be able to walk, and that can make yourself really unsteady. And if you are physically or have other serious disabilities, that can cause a serious fall, which can result in very serious injuries later on. So some of the ways to really take care of your brain, okay, so we talk about the heart, but we want to look at the brain too, okay. There is a saying in the ancient Indian system of medicine. In case you're wondering where my family is from, it's from India. I was born and raised in California, and I grew up in California and lived in, as Casey was saying, in India. I've lived in the nation of Kuwait. I've also lived in the East African nation of Tanzania, as well as here in the United States. And there was a saying throughout my travels that, as well as also in observation, that if your mind is not well, your body eventually is not going to be well. And this is coming from the ancient classical text, the system of medicine known as Ayurveda. It's the integrated system of medicine that goes back over 5,000 years. And what it is the science of life. That's what it means, Ayurveda. So some of the 10 ways, you've heard of this over and over and over again, but you still see so many people who are struggling to maintain that healthy brain as well as overall healthy outlook in life. Exercising frequently, eating nutritious and healthy food. We'll go into that a little bit later. The ability and the willingness to learn, going and complete the educational degree, taking a course, trying to do something. The wonderful aspect of our nation is that Americans and the Western world always believe that education is something that should be accessible to anyone. Yes, higher education is expensive, but at least there's a way that you can still pay for it with loans and whatnot. But the ability to learn, whether whether it's for credit or for a degree or a non-credit course, wanting to learn a new language, a new skill in computer, say wanting to learn to cook a new food, learning to dance, learning anything to learn, because you never ever stop learning in life. And to be able to constantly look into that sort of a big picture and see that you want to learn makes a huge difference. Taking care of your heart. So when your brain is okay, your heart is going to be okay. When your brain is not okay, your heart will not be okay. Bottom line, okay? Learning to manage and to reduce stress effectively, okay? This is a big, big challenge because the COVID pandemic severely tested our nation as well as the entire world on how to go about in being able to successfully manage stress. If you smoke, the best thing to do is to quit. I cannot think of a single beneficial aspect that smoking gives. And now we also have the problem with vaping, which is becoming more problematic among younger people these days. Challenging and activating the mind. Okay, you may have a degree from Harvard or like a top university, Stanford. You may have all these awards, but you know what? You don't know everything. You don't know everything in the world, and you will never learn to know everything. Okay, and so when some people they think they're too smart for their own good, the intelligence of a person is cannot be judged by just only the academic institution that a person attend. The intelligence is like judged by a variety of different things, and to be able to challenge and activate the mind. Okay, learning to keep a good social life, learning to join clubs, to play sport, be friendly, and just go out and just socialize, because human beings are supposed to be social creatures. Not everyone is going to be a social butterfly or the life of a party, but it's never a good thing to always be like very too introvert to the point where you're always alone, you don't want to be around anyone. Some people really like that, but in the end, as you get older, you may have to understand that that kind of an attitude, it may not be beneficial for you in the long run. Sleeping well. I'm a professor in nutrition, and I have taught nutrition to undergraduates for close to 12 years now, and I cannot tell you how many people struggle to sleep well at night because they have to work, they have to go to school, they have to deal with terrible traffic, especially they have to deal with the stress of taking care of their kids and their families, and then being able to find time to do their homework. And sleeping well at night is just a real serious problem due to the fact that they are not able to have that ability to be able to learn and rest, to learn to completely calm down once they finally come back to their home and they lay down to sleep. Because hear people sleeping, they say 3 to 4 hours a night. Not good. The average human being needs to have at least 7 to 8 hours per night, going to bed at the exact same time every day. Because if you start out and have very erratic sleeping pattern going up and down from the time when you are in your college year, it may be difficult to break those habits as you get older. And you're going to find that you're going to have difficulties in doing that, and that can cause a lot of serious problems and getting older. And learning to protect your head from injury, wearing helmets or other gear. There's a law now that if you go on a bicycle, this was not the case when I was a child 40 something years back, but if you are working or going on a bicycle or motorbike or anything, or doing some other activity, you have to wear your helmet. Okay, so the ability to learn. I just also wanted to add, it's a privilege that our nation gives that opportunity to complete your education. Some countries in the world, they have denied education to their citizens, and they've been extremely discriminatory. Take a look at what happened to Afghanistan a few days ago, where the Taliban has taken over, and it's known for its notorious human rights violations against the people, in addition to this very severe discrimination against women. So if you think about that, how education, how much people can do, so many things people can be capable of. So that's where all of this has to have better brain health. Resilient. How do you recover from setbacks, problems, disappointed? How do you recover from challenges? How do you recover and deal with frustration? Okay, many people, they take out the when they don't know, they're angry, they're frustrated, they don't know what to do, they take out their anger by going and screaming at others, or like getting into fights with others, or coping using drugs and alcohol, and doing all the unfortunately self-destructive behaviors that can only make the situation even worse. Well, that is again the biggest challenge that every person has to learn at some point. And learning to stand up for yourself, having a high self-esteem, and making it clear that you will not tolerate any abusive, inappropriate, unacceptable behavior, or let alone unfair practices in say in the job or at school, etc. Learning to have strong mental strength. This is something that takes quite a bit of time throughout a person's life. In my life, I've had to go through many difficulties and problems and challenges, and it took me a long time to be able to successfully learn to be tough, and learning to look at things from another perspective. Accepting and acknowledging that there are things you cannot control. And so a lot of times people turn to religious practices. They learn to pray. They are part of a, some kind of a religion or a church, or, temple, mosque going, etc. You do not necessarily have to be a religious person and join any kind of a religious faith, but learning to accept that there are things in life that you cannot control is part of what it is to be a human, and to cope in difficult situations, doing what you can to the best of your own ability, and accepting that you cannot compare yourself from 1 to 2. Okay, like an apple and an orange. Think about it. They're fruits. Okay, they're tasty, and they are also wonderful to eat. But an apple is grown in cooler climates in the world naturally, and it has a lot of fiber, and it will not have that sweetness. An orange is more sour. So the fact is that they're both delicious but very, very different. So similarly, you cannot compare yourself to another. And this can be a very serious problem, because in many cultures in the world, including mine, in the Asian culture, unfortunately, parents have a tendency to think that many parents, they have a tendency, from the way that they're raised, that in order to push their child to the maximum and to be ambitious, they're constantly comparing themselves, their child to another. What the unfortunate aspect and the result that comes out of it is that the child can develop a low self-esteem, and that can become a very, very serious problem throughout life. And that child can have problems with depression, anxiety, and if also can eventually continue into adulthood and throughout the person's life, including the older years. So how does stress affect the body? Well, from a physical point of view, it does increase the blood sugar. So for those people who are diabetic and they're under a constant amount of stress, this can be a very serious problem. Okay, you do not want your stress levels to affect you when you are always being a diabetic. Rising blood pressure. If you're for those people who struggle with hypertension or high blood pressure, this is also a problem. The rapid heartbeat. Okay, your heartbeat is going to be going pretty fast, and the stress hormones such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and all from the adrenal gland. The fight or flight response. You may have heard that what it is before if you've ever studied the general biology and have gone into more the neurobiology. The fight or flight response is what keeps us, aware, and then it sharpens our senses. So if we're in a place that, say for example, where we don't feel good and they're not in a good area, say of town, okay, you want to get out of there as fast as possible. Okay, but if you don't have any choice to fight as the last resort, this is where the adrenaline and whatnot kicks in, which is what the case is in almost throughout nature. Animals, wild animals, when they have to survive, if they're for territorial reason, if they want to protect a mother, like a mother lion, a lioness wants to protect her cubs, or an elephant wants to protect my mother elephant wants to protect her loved ones, or a little baby. They will do everything they can, that is to fight off all enemies and any potential predators, or anybody, including man, to make sure that they achieve their goal. So some of the duties of life. Okay, this is something we all have to eventually learn. Okay, the daytime ritual, the healthy diet and hydration, physical exercise, stress management, rest and sleep. okay, and learning to look at things in the way so none of these get affected. So each and every one should develop some kind of a daytime ritual, because if the pattern in their sleep and their eating and everything becomes erratic, that's eventually going to lead to problem. Okay, if they don't do much exercise, that also can be a problem. See, if a person has a physical disability or something of a sort, that individual needs to get the physical therapy as soon as possible, and learning to look at things from a more a positive perspective, and accepting, as I said before, the things that can and cannot be controlled. This makes a big difference. Some of the current difficulty, the pandemic, as you know, the here at BCDA, we have had to go back to wearing masks again here in the office just this past Friday because of the Delta variant, which has also started to take a toll on our country, and there hasn't been any signs of it slowing down. The economic downturn from the last year and a half has really put a huge toll and stress upon so many millions of people, considering they lost their jobs and they were basically evicted from their place, and they are not able to put food on the table, pay the bills, etc. Okay, systematic racism and sexism. I'll, over the last 4 or 5 years, our previous administration, not to get into any politics, but there has been a lot of turmoil in our country. All right, the violence and the inequality and uncertainty of the future. And this hasn't just been taking place here in the U.S., but in other places around the world. And as you just saw, that the Taliban took over Afghanistan, that's one thing. And then just recently, over this past weekend, Haiti suffered from a horrific earthquake, which has so far claimed like close to about 1,500 people, I believe. Right, and some of these things, the very, very horrible things that have happened in life, so many problems and so on. It's just that. There are many things in life you just don't have in control, and all you can do is do the best you can to cope in such a difficult situation. Okay, now looking at your blood pressure, okay, are you really taking care of yourself with regard to your blood pressure? It should be basically, if you have a history of a family history of blood pressure, you got to do what you can to make sure that you should try to check it like at least a few times a year. Okay, the systolic, as you know, is the when the heart contracts, and the diastolic is the term when the heart relaxes. So if it's below 120 for systolic and below 80 for the diastolic, you should be okay. Elevated 120 to 129, you got to start doing something to change your diet, or perhaps learn to lose weight and learn to de-stress a bit. And same with the high blood pressure here is if you notice that diastolic is while it's below, the systolic becomes even more critical when the high blood pressure, when it goes from 130 to 139. A few years ago, the American Heart Association started to lower that aspect, and started to state that 130 to 139 is definitely high blood pressure. Stage 2 hypertension, which is a common problem I've seen in many obese patients and within the elderly, that when the systolic goes over 140 and the diastolic is over 90, and finally a true hypertensive crisis, which can inevitably lead to a stroke, is 180 plus, and diastolic is 120, which is extremely dangerous, and medications and emergency critical measures have to be taken. So I would suggest, make sure that before you go to take any medications, do what you can to reduce your blood pressure by exercising, learning to de-stress. If you're upset about something and angry at something of a sort, the way to do, don't get into a fight with them, don't start screaming. The way that you can do it, and it isn't easy, it's a lot easier said than done. This is where mental health comes in. And although I'm not a mental health professional, me as a dietitian, we work with so many people who are in therapy, and who have done a lot of mental health. I've even worked with a psychiatrist a couple times before. The way to do it is having to learn to pull back, and then from the situation, sort of remove yourself, and then sort of calm down, and it take a good 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, or as long as you can, to calm down. And it isn't easy. Okay, I think that's something that takes quite a bit of practice, and it becomes better as you get older. But for younger people, they can be very, very impulsive. They can be very rash. And for teenagers and young people, etc., it's not always easy to tell them to do that, because they're not mature to be able to understand and really come to terms with the whole situation, depending on how serious it is. You've heard of the DASH diet, right? We always like look at it as a good diet for hypertension because it helps as well as the brain, because it helps to promote grains and vegetables. Okay, but any type of cooked vegetables, I usually like to emphasize more on cooked vegetables rather than raw vegetables, such as eating salads on a daily basis, mainly because the body has a better chance of digesting cooked vegetables due to the fact that we are the only species that I know of on the planet that uses fire to cook our food. And so when you cook it nicely, it's a lot easier to digest. With raw vegetables, on the other hand, the body needs to utilize a lot more energy. And as you and I both know, we are not cows, goats, or horses where we can just take anything and put it in our mouth, because our body does not have that particular enzyme that was not given by nature in the first place to be able to digest raw, like a raw food from a long period of time. Eating like fruits such as a banana, grapes, such as I suggest to eat fruits like on a as snacks. So if you want to have a good snack, eating a fruit, you can't go wrong with it. Even for diabetics, people have said, hey, but fruits have sugar, but the natural sugar makes a huge difference because you can eat it in a far much more efficient manner if you eat it by itself as opposed to eating with something else. Okay, so fat-free or low-fat dairy products, okay, 2 to 3 servings a day, assuming if you can tolerate dairy, because a lot of people could be, they have issues with the lactose intolerance. So if you don't care for milk, no problem. What about going with something like almond milk, flax milk, soy milk, oat milk? Would that be a better alternative? And they even now have these interesting types of yogurts that you can look at. Because, for example, I'm a strict vegetarian, borderline vegan. I like to go with a lot of the dairy products that are non-dairy, because they are much easier on my stomach for me to digest. And it makes a huge difference, because I don't really have any issues with like a diarrhea or indigestion or anything like that. Because what I noticed with the dairy products that like such as milk, if I were to drink it without it, it sometimes can really upset my stomach. And a lot of times I'm hesitant to ask for, say, with pasta or pizza, where they put a lot of cheese on it, especially, I'm hesitant to eat that because that processed cheese, it can be like it can upset my stomach. Looking at lean meats, poultry and fish. I suggest going with poultry and fish and maybe tuna and turkey. I didn't include that, rather than going with red meat, because the issue with red meat, such as beef and pork, it has a lot of saturated fat in it. And if you are looking to lose weight, you want to reduce your cholesterol, you want to also reduce your blood pressure, you got to watch the amount of beef and pork and other red meat that you're consuming. So poultry and fish would be most appropriate. And sticking with the plant-based diet, seeds, nuts, and legumes. Of course, if you're allergic to any nut, just stop it. You don't need to take it. But going something with legumes, such as or beans and lentils, which is very common in my culture, I eat that quite a bit to obtain the protein, and it's just as good as eating animal protein. And fats and oil, using 2 to 3 servings a day, and small amounts of sugar that can be added. Added sugars, if you've noticed, is a new sort of a part of the label that you may have been seeing on juice and all these cakes and cookies and other different types of products. What I've been doing now is really searching for those types of juice when I buy, like fruit juice, when I buy from the grocery store, something that has no added sugar. I try to remove that as much as possible. And it's not always easy to do that. It's not always easy to find that. So I decided to look at some of the most important nutrients that we really need as elderly people, for individuals who really want to keep their brain health optimum. Vitamin D. It promotes the absorption of calcium and phosphorus, okay? And it's one of the 4 fat-soluble vitamins. We need this for lots of different functions. And unfortunately, vitamin D deficiency is a common problem throughout the world. It protects against cancer, and it has been shown to make our bones strong and durable. Vitamin D and calcium, they love each other. They're like best friends, and they really work very, very well together with regard to keeping our bones strong. You know, osteoporosis is a common problem in, and it has especially been known to affect women after menopause because the estrogen level falls. And so vitamin D and calcium is very important, and it is not a bad idea to take supplement. Me, for I have to take vitamin D supplements mainly because it is tough to find vitamin D in plant-based food. The only one is mushrooms, but I can't really eat mushrooms on a daily basis. And I don't eat any eggs. I don't eat chicken, fish, meat. I really, for the yogurt, I basically kind of stay away from it. So I go with the plant-based milk. I stick with some cheese, like that is the vegan cheese and tofu. But my best way of getting the vitamin D, because the issue for me is that it was not enough, and that's why my vitamin D levels were really low. I had to end up going on a supplement, which has been very beneficial for me. Moving to magnesium, you may have heard of magnesium, the fourth, most common mineral in the body. Magnesium deficiency is not very, very common throughout this country, but it is in those places where malnutrition is an issue, where people are starving and they have issues with the finding proper food. It is primarily found in plant-based related food, and it is needed for lots of things. For those of you who've ever studied biology before, ATP means adenine triphosphate, which is basically called the energy of life. So when we move our bodies and everything, we are all dependent on ATP. It's needed with protein metabolism for regulating the blood sugar, blood pressure, and also needed for building the DNA, which makes them, each and every one of us have unique composition. It regulates the sleep and the parasympathetic nervous system function. Okay. The nervous system is divided into phases: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Okay, the sympathetic one is responsible for adrenaline function. Say you're like waiting for the bus stop, and then you're running but for whatever reason you're late. Okay, you want to get to your examination on time. If you remember in those days when you you needed to go and run to take your exam, that's when you take off running and you grab it or get onto the nearest bus and go to your school to take your exam. Say, for example, you are in a race, you're running a race, and you want to do what you can, you see the finish line, and then you want to go as fast as possible. If you were, say, really stressed and for whatever reason want to get out of, like, say, a bad situation, as I was saying before, this is what happens when the stress level goes up. With the blood sugar rising, you start to sweat, your heartbeat and it goes up, and you're breathing really fast, and this is when your senses altogether start to sharpen, and then you know that it's time to go into overdrive mode to achieve your goal, say to beat the to win the race, for example. Parasympathetic means it works in the opposite direction. It basically slows you down. It lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your breathing, it lowers your heartbeat. It makes you feel much more calm and tranquil. And it also helps to regulate the sleep and to really chill. So you need to have, as a normal human being with the brain health and the nervous system and everything working properly, a good balance between your parasympathetic nervous system function and your sympathetic nervous system function. You don't want to have one is much better than the other, and then everything can get disrupted. The balance can be disrupted. It helps to regulate your muscle and nerve function. You want to make sure your muscles are working properly. Your nerve functions, you want to make sure everything is fine. The brain has neurons. Neurons are the cells that are in the brain, and unfortunately, if a neuron dies, usually it cannot be replaced. So that's one thing about the brain that makes it very unique. And it's found, as I said, in mostly these nuts, seeds, greens, vegetables. And as long as you eat many of this, you should be okay with magnesium supplement. I have not really seen that many times when I've seen magnesium had to be given as a supplement. So as long as you're able to get it from your food, you'll get. Zinc, you need it for lots of different things: the immune system, DNA, and known as the 300 enzymes. If you have, again, looking at biology, enzymes are the types of substances that speed up the chemical and metabolic reactions in the body. Okay, it needs over 300 of them, and think different enzymes are there to do different things. For example, lipase is a enzyme that helps to break down fat. A protease breaks down protein. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates, lots of different ones. So those are just among so many of them. Your senses of taste and smell is very important with zinc. And this has been a big issue over the last year and a half, because one of the most horrible things about COVID is that in the your senses of taste and smell get affected. And this is where zinc probably is needed to help to bring it back. All right. For those people who are in nursing homes and long-term care facilities, they frequently have to deal with something known as bed sores, and they cannot get out of the bed. And what happens is that the friction caused by the sheets and the skin, for after a prolonged lying down for a long period of time, can cause wounds or pressure wounds. And this is can become a serious problem, because the more greater the pressure and the more serious it can be, that can be also life-threatening. So wounds and injury healing is basically assisted with zinc, because they work with the immune system, and also you needed to combine it with protein to heal those that injury. The reproductive system for those individuals, who have struggled with problems with the fertility, etc. Zinc, especially women, zinc has been known to be helpful. For other issues related to the, during the development of the fetus before the baby is born, you want to, for both for males as well as female, zinc is needed to be taken by a pregnant woman. It reduces the inflammation, and that makes a huge difference, because COVID itself can be a very serious inflammatory disease. And to be able to reduce that inflammation, taking zinc can be very beneficial. It's found in a combination of both plant and animal-based food. While red meat is good, the only problem is it has too much of cholesterol, so I usually don't recommend it. I would say stick with chicken and turkey and legumes, whole grain. If you are not allergic to gluten of any type, you can have oats. Shellfish, the problem is, here in Maryland, we're very famous for the seafood, the crab cakes and everything. Problem is, if you're allergic to it, that's not a good idea. So, and even I've had a few people who are also allergic to mushrooms. So one of the things that I talk to people is that when I do a counseling session, I ask them what food can they not tolerate, any food that they have intolerances or in allergic reaction. The difference between a food intolerance and a food allergy is that the food allergy involves the immune system, whereas food intolerance, say if you're just having a gas or some indigestion or gas pain or something, it's not as serious. Still, anytime you ever see a type of food, like I tell even my elderly client, that if they don't feel good about it, if it makes them feel funny, if there's, if they break out, even if it's a very tiny rash, do not eat it or touch it ever again. Do not drink it or touch it ever again, because everyone's body is different. Remember, everybody is unique, and certain foods just do not always, agree with everyone. It all depends on the person. Looking at potassium and sodium, you would have heard of this. For sodium particularly, we look at this as we don't want to eat too much of salt, because that's the one that's going to create problems with our blood pressure. You want to keep your potassium and sodium levels balanced. They maintain the fluid and electrolyte balance. If you remember a long time ago when you were in school, you might have taken biology and remember that the basic structure of life is called the cell. And in a cell, think of it as a circle. You'll see that the potassium ions are inside and the sodium ions are outside of a cell. And then they go in opposite directions to maintain that fluid and electrolytic balance. So if the potassium or the sodium, even if it's a bit too high or a bit too low, that can become a problem, because it can affect the heartbeat. It can affect the blood pressure. It can affect the function of the heartbeat, the nerves, electrical transmission. All kinds of problems can come about. And these two elements are not something that you should ever take for granted. Sodium food you can find, mostly in table salt or any type of salt. The problem is that you want to find a good type of salt that will not affect your thyroid. So such as the Morton's, you've ever heard of the Morton's iodized salt. That's one thing that is very good. But yet you can go with Himalayan pink salt. You can go with other types of salt. Just make sure, or even sea salt for that matter, just make sure that you don't neglect the iodine, because because you do need that. Potassium, you can find it in most types of fruits, like bananas has very high potassium, and blueberries, blackberries are excellent. Sweet potatoes is very good. So for those people who really want to lose weight, who really have high blood pressure, they want to reduce the sodium level and increase the potassium level. So like I said, they work in opposite direction. So your gut health, meaning that what you digest and what you eat, is going to affect your brain. Because if you are, say, constipated and have frequent problems with constipation, that is going to make you feel foggy. That is going to affect your concentration. That also is going to make you feel very lethargic. Okay, so regular bowel movements are really important on a daily basis. Even though this is a subject of a lot of jokes and like toilet jokes, and it doesn't become a joke when it can land you in the hospital. It doesn't become a joke, say, when you're diagnosed with colon cancer or a serious urinary tract infection, or known as UTI. Okay, you want to urinate at least 4 to 5 times a day and drink plenty of water. And when you drink that water, okay, it shouldn't be ice cold water. I get it is super hot and it's humid outside, but remember, your body temperature is 98.6. Ice cold water is 35 degrees, and the problem is it's because it's such a big gap in the temperature. The body has to work extra hard to bring back that temperature of that ice cold water to where it should be for proper absorption. So the water that you drink shouldn't be too cold, too hot, but room temperature. In the wintertime, because it's cold, maybe you could have it a little warm and like lukewarm water. That would be good. So it makes it appropriate for absorption. The summer, even in the heat of the summer, cool water is like, say, I would say 60 degrees or something would be, but not super icy cold water, because that can affect also the digestion too when you're drinking ice cold water and eating. Eating whole grains, fruits and vegetables makes a big difference, and taking your time to eat. Okay, do not rush through eating. Give yourself at least a good 15, 20 minutes, even a half an hour to sit. That's why if some of you still work, okay, or if any of you have retired, make it a point to sit at your lunch for at least a good 15 to 20 minutes and do nothing and just chill for that time. Enjoy your meal. Okay, many people, they just, like my students, for example, they take like their book or something, they're reading the phone, and they eat their food like this, and they're not even paying attention. And no, you should not do that. You should try to make it a point, like, especially, I didn't grow up with cell phones, but in the now we have cell phone. Everybody owns a cell phone and an iPad now. You will see these days. I tell my students, put your cell phone down, turn the TV off, sit at your table, and just eat at dinner time or lunchtime every single day, even for breakfast. Okay, keep your stress levels under control, and reduce that high sugar, high fat, that refined, processed type of foods in the diet, and remove anything that can cause, like foods that can create problems. So anything you eat, and if you have something that gives you serious allergies or intolerances and you cannot eat it whatsoever, you stay away from that food for the rest of your life. Don't eat it because somebody else is eating it. Some people, they do outgrow it. Some people, they don't. But we don't know why some people react very, very strongly to one food as opposed to another, why there's such a high immune response, such as eating peanuts. Like, for example, peanut allergy can be very dangerous and life-threatening. Some of the unhealthy ways of coping. Now, this is where more mental health comes in, and it is very much oriented with food, because this is a problem with emotional eating. People who have been extremely stressed out because of the pandemic, they have put on a lot of weight because they've been eating just as a way to cope. They've been drinking a lot because being forced to come back home, you can't work and you lose your job, and some people get so depressed they start to drink a lot more. Drinking 2 glasses of wine, beer, and more than that, it's just not a good idea. You really want to make sure that you have to cut back on that as needed. Taking out the frustrations, problems, and angers on people, that is just never a good idea to do, because we all have our problems, we all have our difficulty, but it is not appropriate to do that. And this is something that young people have to learn, and they eventually have to learn this as they get older. Abusing drugs, illegal, recreational, prescription, it doesn't matter. abusing drugs is not going to help you get any better. Driving recklessly, if you're angry, because if you've noticed, a lot of people, they get very angry on the road these days because the COVID traffic, pre-COVID traffic has returned. It seems to have been getting worse. If anyone was traveling on the 695 yesterday, I got stuck for about an hour on the freeway because there was I think a tree had hit a sign, and with this crazy wind and rain, and there was a lot of debris and branches and also parts of the trees that have fallen onto the freeway, and took about an hour for the cleaning crew to come and remove everything. So that patience you have to have. Okay, driving recklessly, people can get very angry, with road rage. Oh my gosh, yeah, I don't know if you remember hearing just a few months ago in LA County, there was a 6-year-old boy that was shot dead in a road rage incident for probably the most trivial and most idiotic reason, and it's also horrific. So you never want to do that. Losing control, okay, not paying attention to your health, and neglecting your health and your hygiene, and also neglecting your work, neglecting your family. That can be a sign of losing control. Any poor, unhealthy, negative attitudes about food. Usually this also starts when a person is a child and may have been shamed constantly for body shaming, or has suffered from some kind of an eating disorder, which has been exacerbated by, for that reason. The lack of awareness. This is where a mental health professional has to come in, and a counselor or therapist really needs to help them deal with such situations, learning to cope. Verbal, emotional, physical, sexual abuse, including domestic violence. It has definitely increased during the course of the pandemic. And it's also in my community, from Indian origin, we do not like to talk about domestic violence, considered to be a very taboo subject for a long, long time, but it is unfortunately rife. It is very, very common in my community. Verbal, emotional, and physical abuse also is quite common, because in Indian culture, I don't know if it's such a good thing or not, but it is acceptable for parents to spank their kid quite a bit. There's been a lot of debate on whether spanking and beating the kids over them, but that does not usually work on a long-term basis. But this is what some of my family members, when they've grown up in India, have definitely had to deal with. Neglect and abandonment. This is also something like when you have a family and then a child that being neglected. If you're feeling unhappy and you fail to, feed your children or take care of themselves, you seem to be in your own world. You're not really paying attention to your surrounding. That can be a cause for neglect and abandonment. And the imbalance of the mind leads to the imbalance of the physical body. Like I said, if your brain is messed up, body will be messed up. Bottom line. So that's how you got to look at it. Some of the anti-inflammatory foods that we take into consideration, like chicken, hot chicken soup, dark chocolate, nuts, bananas, leaves, water, avocado. These are excellent for helping, helping to reduce that inflammation. Dark chocolate, what I like to go with is something that has to do with some of the bitter, organic one that has no refined sugars or any added, products that are put into. That's not quite always easy to find. You have to look at it maybe in a organic grocery store from a reputable brand. The whole grain carbohydrates, better than simple carbohydrates, wheat, rye, rice, etc., brown rice. Not assuming you're not allergic to it. Milk, if I like to prefer the non-dairy milk. Bananas, assuming if your potassium level is okay and you don't have any problems, or even I had a few cases where bananas have been given a allergy. And leafy greens like spinach, kale, bok choy, you can't really go wrong with that. Water, room temperature or warm water, okay, when you drink that. Avocados, there are cases where allergic reactions have been reported, but avocados are excellent when it comes to providing a unsaturated fat and also lots of different vitamins, and can be excellent with regards to trying to fight inflammation. Fatty fish, assuming if you not have a problem with them, going with this, it would give you the monounsaturated fat, meaning that it's much better and will help with the reducing the cholesterol. And finally, vitamin C fruit, oranges, lemons, and strawberries, they all contain a variety of different antioxidants, especially vitamin C, that can help to protect and boost immunity. Something to restrict: caffeine, processed food, you've heard this before, saturated fat, cholesterol, too much of cakes, cookie chips. It's okay to have it every once in a while. I mean, life is meant to be enjoyed. If you want to have it every once in a while, that's fine. Alcohol, assuming if you cannot have much of a control over it in terms of understanding your limit, you better just take it out. Alcohol plays a big role in nutrition, but unfortunately, some people, they just do not know how to control their consumption. They just don't know how to do it, no matter how much education does. So those people need to completely stop it altogether. It's just really not a good idea. Reduction or elimination of food allergens, gluten, milk, eggs, fish, oats, peanuts, and tree nuts. These are among the most well-known. And then there was recently, the New York Times, I think this must have been about a few months ago, included sesame, the sesame seed, and red meat like beef, lamb, and pork. Again, that has a bit too much of saturated fat and cholesterol, and that's something you want to remove. So, good nutrition tips: that no diet there's no such thing as a perfect diet. People come from different cultures, different backgrounds, and there are foods that are going to be beneficial, foods that are okay, and foods that are not okay. So that from every single, background, every single culture, there's no such thing as a perfect best diet. Okay, no guarantees can be made in life. All we can do is try to better ourselves for the best, to move on for the best. So eating timed meal is what I recommend. If you can do it between 6 to 8, 12 to 1:30, 5:30 to 7:30 for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, great. And eating exactly at the same time every single day. Okay, trying to reduce coffee and tea, because the alcoholic consumption, if you can, having 1 cup is pretty good, and I would not recommend if you have 1 or 2 drinks per week, because the one thing about alcohol is that even though if you were to go with, say, wine coolers or something of the sort, that's not much. The issue is that still it's about 7 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. If you are having or have a history of alcohol abuse, or had a family history of alcoholism, try to see you don't really need it, because one of the things is that every person needs fats, carbohydrates, protein, vitamin, minerals, and water. Alcohol is the 7th nutrient that is not required for survival. If you want to consume 2 light meals, like for example, I've had several elderly people say they can't eat 3 meals a day, they would prefer 2. No problem, eat something heavy between 10:30 to 12, and then a light dinner from 5:30 to 5 to 6:30, and then have like a fruit or something in the evening, or in something in between, lunch and dinner, or brunch and dinner, I would say. And then having some snacks, like the fruits are the best thing. You can also go with a whole wheat bread if you're not gluten intolerant. You can even go with like a potato bread if you'd like to go try that. That doesn't have added sugar, or even the organic peanut butter that has no added sugar. And you have to kind of look for that in the grocery store. That can be excellent for a healthy snack. Some of the hydration benefits, I would say, is to drink really good amount of water, cooler room temperature water throughout the spring and summer, and keeping a water bottle with you available at all times. Make sure that when you go to the bathroom, you want to make sure that your urine is not too light and not too dark. It should be right in the middle. Okay, and yes, it does, because if anybody has experienced pain in the groin or painful sensations, that can really affect your mind. It means that your mind, not only your kidneys are, having a hard time filtrating, all the toxin from your blood, that is a liquid toxin. That means that you are dehydrated, and that can also affect your mind and make you really feel very, very tired, especially in very, very hot weather. Drinking plenty of water after exercise. This is especially important for the elderly, because their fluid needs increases as a person gets older. It's what everybody has to go through naturally as a person ages. I've had plenty of people who have struggled with nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, and heartburn. And constipation and diarrhea, going back and forth, is a big issue. for some people who don't drink enough of water, some people who don't drink enough of or don't eat enough of fiber that or like don't exercise, that can cause problems with constipation. Tea and coffee, just limit it. Go with the unsweetened one. If you're a diabetic, I would suggest you skip the sugar altogether. Try to see if you can keep it very small. Decaffeinated or caffeinated tea depends on how much your body can take. I once had this really crazy patient a long time ago that was so addicted to coffee. She would take 15 cups of the 15. I'm not joking. At least 15, 1 cup of these, little things of the coffee that actually is a slightly larger. Think of the Starbucks one on a daily basis. She was just completely all over the place. And the reason is that she was having problems with heart palpitations and not enough of water. She was dehydrated and she was struggling with urinary incontinence. It's because the large amount of caffeine, and that can be, addictive. But both tea and coffee are diuretics, means that it strips the body of fluid. So you want to make sure that you drink enough of water that replaces the fluid lost from tea and coffee. Alcohol, I should also add, is a diuretic as well. So if you ever go to a place like you want to socialize, try to see after you drink your wine, see if you can also get some fluid in there, because that wine or beer is going to reduce the amount of fluid in your body. Okay, so things like probiotics, prebiotics, probiotic foods, and prebiotics. This is just a big. I'm starting to run out of time. I just wanted to give you an idea that this is what it's all about. There are lots of different things that you can look at. This is kind of the different types of food. They can be definitely very beneficial. I prefer to go with the non-dairy kefir, pickled vegetables to an extent. Kimchi is a very famous fermented cabbage that is very well known and regarded in Korean cuisine, traditional Korean cuisine. Miso soup is primarily found in Japanese. The kombucha, that drink, I've not really had it much. It was all right. I have to admit that it wasn't something that I really go. So I go with the prebiotic. It's the one that it stimulates the bacteria far more often than the probiotic. I do eat pretty much everything here. The exception is not so much of dandelion greens, although I've made a juice out of it before, which tastes pretty good when you mix it with the celery and carrots and whatnot. So, okay, bottom line, there are no set rules what you need to do. Accepting events in your life is like COVID-19 is not in your control. Practicing that hygiene, keeping the social distancing as needed, and wearing a mask, eating a nutritionally sound and balanced diet, sleeping well, having the physical exercise, and trying to keep yourself as busy and occupied as possible is one of the key and major things that you want to do. Certain problems that you are going to be dealing with life, it's inevitable. Life happens. You don't know what's going to happen later on in the next minute. You have no idea where your life is going to go. Sometimes it can be so difficult, you don't even know where the next steps will take. But eventually, if you as my father always taught me, because he himself also went through a very difficult life, and before he came to this country, he had to go through a lot. He said that keeping a positive outlook, and it's not easy. Okay, like I said, a lot easier said than done, is going to be the key for you to get through the most difficult time in life. So with that reason, everybody, with that, I thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to me. And thank you again, Casey, for giving me this opportunity to speak to this wonderful group of individuals.
Thank you so much to Dr. Divya Selvakumar. And I just jotted down, I learned so much from your presentation, and I just want to kind of list a couple of the takeaways. Healthy diet and hydration is linked to our brains and our bodies. They're all tied together, and what you eat will help us feel better in different ways, and can make us feel worse in different ways too. You highlighted vitamin D, magnesium, zinc as really important nutrients for us to make sure we eat enough of, and to be mindful that we're getting enough potassium and keeping that sodium level down to match it.
Yeah. it has to be balanced. That's all I say, because in order to test your sodium and potassium level, when you go to a doctor, you're going to do something that's known as the basic metabolic profile, or the BMP. Okay, it's like they will take a blood test. You know how it is at a physical, and you'll have an opportunity to see. The doctor will show you if your potassium level is too high or too low. So vice versa with sodium and the other thing. And these are one of the things the main indicators that need to look in there. So to keep that balance is very important. Yes.
Wonderful. We have a question that's popped up a couple times. Would you be
Sure.
willing to share your slides with our participants today?
Yeah. Kate, I sent you a copy of it, right?
I do.
Yes. So you have it. So you can definitely send it to everyone. Yes.
Great. I see Charlie with his hand up. Charlie, what's your question?
Yeah, my question is, since I work with the Department of Aging, do you work at the by CODA?
Yes.
You do? Okay. I'm going to
Yes.
stop in to see you and get a couple.
Oh, sure. I'm in the nutrition office. Yes, most definitely, sir.
I will. I'm with the Retired Volunteer Senior Program, plus a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, very well done.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And Dr. Divya's contact information will be in the slides as well, in case anyone wants to reach out to her. And I also want to mention, we talked about alcohol. If you or someone you know is struggling to control your alcohol consumption, help is available. The Baltimore County REACH team is available Monday through Saturday from 8:30 to midnight. And you can give them a call and talk to someone who knows what it's like to have trouble controlling your drinking.
Yeah.
So that number, I'll read it out loud. It's 410-887-3224. 410-887-3224. All right, any final thoughts before we close today? Charlie, you're muted.
Oops, muted.
You had up there fats and oils, and what are fats and oils to you? And I forgot what slide it was on, but I love olive oil and stuff like that. But what are you referring to when you speak of oils and fats?
Well, the oils, like the different types of like a cooking oil that are out there, such as olive oil, canola oil. You can go with avocado oil. These are the types of oils like you can use for cooking. And the fats, usually they come from the different types of fats, such as unsaturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated fats. These are the things that they're looking at. So I'm looking at where you looked at this, and oh yes, I think the DASH diet, that's what I was saying. The fats and oils are something that has like anything that has fatty food, like fatty molecules in that, you want to see if you can limit it, but you want to go with the healthy fat, not the unhealthy one. And the unhealthy ones are usually like the saturated fats that are found in cakes and cookies, red meats, and where the cholesterol can be very, very high. Whereas the unsaturated fat is the best one that you want to go with, because they're the ones, like olive oil is excellent, and things that are they raise what is known as the high density level cholesterol, or the good cholesterol, HDL, and they lower the bad cholesterol, which is known as low density low density lipoprotein. So HDL with high density lipoprotein.
Thank you. Casey, you're going to share that, right, with us?
Yes.
The slides or everything she just said?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen.
The
I
slides
just
will go.
have a quick question. When you say the grain is 6 to 8 serving a day, or maybe vegetable 4 to 5 servings a day, like how much is that? That consider 4 to 5 servings a day.
Okay. Okay, the one thing about serving sizes, it can be complicated. I don't want you to have to pull your head out to do this, because, for example, think of it, a half cup of cooked vegetables is 1 serving. Okay, this is the hundreds of types of foods. So we dietitians, when we do an assessment, we have to estimate that because this is difficult to be able to go with each and every single type of food. Say half servings is one type, is half a cup of cooked vegetables. I'm sorry, is 1 serving. 1 cup of raw vegetables is 1 serving. 1/3 cup of cooked rice. You can't eat raw rice, obviously. Well, 1/3 cup of cooked rice is 1 serving. So usually when we count them, we add them and then we put it as a serving. Now, every person is different, and it all depends on the weight of the person and the height of the person, as well as the overall body makeup. When I do my counseling, I do not like to focus too much on saying this is serving is this cup is this half cup, eat half cup of this, eat 1 cup of it, no, drink cup, no. The reason why I say that is because I tell, if you really say you're serious about wanting to lose weight, you're going to drive yourself absolutely crazy, and that's not going to work. Because what I perceive, say, for example, to be like a light meal, it might be very, very different from what your so-called definition is of a light meal. Okay, what you perceive as a heavy meal is going to be different from my version of what it means to be a heavy meal. So going with the servings, because if you do look at the list of servings, that can be something that you can, serving size, you can take a look at it, but it can become very, very overwhelming, and it can be quite, So that's why I suggest that if you are, say, serious about wanting to change your diet, and you want to look into something, say, with regard to a medical condition that you have, and you want to improve it, that you will need to see a qualified dietitian who has experience in not only from the Western, but also from a holistic point of view, and that studies also Eastern, medicine related things as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
How can someone find a dietitian if they're interested?
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for how someone can find a dietitian?
For the dietitian, I would have to I don't have particular dietitians I can have in mind, because I don't, at BCDA, I'm not involved in doing counseling here, because we work with the community, not individual, can't really do, that's more in the health related field. So I would say that the best thing is to go with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics at eatright.org. They should have a directory of different dietitians and the one who happens to specialize in it. So you can even look at the specialties in doing the outpatient dietitians, and then holistic dietitian. You can even look at that and check them out.
Thank you. And does the Baltimore County have dietitian services available?
Yeah, they should. Baltimore County, throughout Baltimore County, the state of Maryland, a dietitian has to have that particular license to be qualified as a dietitian. And you can, same with Washington, D.C., same with Virginia, and I don't know if anybody else is coming from outside of Maryland, but yes. So they have to be licensed by the state to be, and then, look at their years of experience and look at what they actually focus on.
Wonderful. And in your experience, are dietitian services covered by Medicaid or Medicare?
Yeah, they can be. Not Medicare and Medicaid, no, but actually, but it depends on the insurance that you have, but not usually Medicare, Medicaid. Yeah, which is unfortunate. So, because a lot of time we're seen by the preventive side of medicine. Not the treatment side of medicine is basically those are like nurses, doctors, physician's assistant. Medicare has like 1 or 2 clauses that will allow for, if a person has diabetes or something with kidney function, they will allow for it to be billed in that sense. But it's very, very limited. And so they have like different rules for each, for Medicare and Medicaid. So if you had like another health insurance, and you just need to look at the clauses and see how much they can cover. Yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, that's one of the things I really hate, because our nation runs in terms of healthcare insurance. nation here in the U.S. is one of the most expensive. Healthcare in America is probably the most expensive in the whole world. And so insurance is the one that helps a lot of people. But if you're uninsured, which is the problem for a lot, like millions of people out there, then there are ways to be able to go for low cost, consultations from certain clinics.
Is that something that someone could reach out to a senior center about looking into if they were interested in?
Yeah, they would probably have to contact the MAP, the Maryland MAP. MAP, it's called the Department of MAP or something.
Yeah, Maryland Access Point. I'll
Access Point,
put the phone number in the chat for us. And for anyone who has a computer, whether you're joining us from Baltimore County or not, Maryland Access Point is the resource line for seniors and people with disabilities in any county throughout the state of Maryland. So that is definitely a resource that's available no matter where you live. And I'll share the number for Baltimore County. It is 410-887-2594. That's 410-887-2594. Baltimore County, Maryland Access Point. All right, well, we are over our time. I'd like to invite everyone, if you enjoyed the content today, we host a number of events promoting brain health and mental well-being. You can check those out at mdaging.org/events. We update them every month. A big thank you to Dr. Divya for joining us today. And thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Good night, everybody. Take care. All right, then. Bye-bye.